Hello, everybody. How you doing? Yep, totally messing up my camera the moment I come on live. Huh. I moved the camera and everything is being screwed up now. But hello. Almost there. Let's see. There we go. Right about there. Just trying a slightly different angle. Not much different, but a little bit different. Hey, Mr. Nope, how you doing? So, I am here. I promised I would be here Super Bowl Sunday. I am here. I am wearing my Panthers hat. They're not in the Super Bowl. Hell, I was surprised they were in the playoffs. But topic today is going to be kind of fluid. I've got one or two things I want to talk about. But overall, if you guys got anything you want to mention, bring up, just say the word. We can shift and divert a little bit. How long the show goes today might go the regular hour. Hey, Ed, good to see you. All depends on how many people are showing up, but we got two. That's usually pretty good for me. So, all right. So, I got two shows I want to talk about today. And they're not going to be spoilery in the sense because there's a good chance you guys haven't seen these. They're not the high profile stuff going on right now. One is a little bit older. It's on Peacock. And I don't know how many people actually have Peacock. So, but it's called The Day of the Jackal. And the other, of course, is the new Star Trek series, Starfleet Academy. And I have thoughts on both, and I kind of want to talk about them. Like I said, though, if you guys got anything you want to talk about, throw it in the chat. We'll try to get to it. But until then, we are going to get things rolling. Uh, the football game looks like it's kind of boring right now, so it's only 3-0. So we're just going to get going. All right. So, how many of you are familiar with the Day of the Jackal? That is it was originally a book by, I think it's Frederick Forsyth. What's his name? Yeah, Frederick Forsyth. It was written in 1971. So it is pretty much my name, my age. It was 71, I was 70. So have you heard anything about when to expect the Neely series? Still nothing new on either of those. They haven't released anything yet. I think they're not going to say anything because they want to focus on Alex Cross, which will be the next one. And the Alex Cross series are kind of in the same vein as the Reacher stuff. So I think there's a good chance we'll get the Alex Cross series, which starts next week or the week after. And once that's just about done, then they'll start. Maybe Neely will be after that. We'll have to see. But I haven't gotten any specifics on it yet. So, all right. So, Day of the Jackal. It's a fascinating book. It's about an assassin hired to kill Charles de Gaulle. It's a very 1970s book. It's current at the time, and it was turned into a movie 2 years later, and that's pretty rare for a book to come out and be adapted that quickly, which shows you how impressive the book was. The film starred Edward Fox, a young Derek Jacobi, and a lot of British actors of that era. I mean, it was just, you know, um, and I remember watching it when I was a kid, probably sometime in like 76, 77. My dad and I used to hang out on the weekends. My mom started working and she would end up working weekends because she worked at a Kmart. And my dad was a pressman and he would work during the week and we'd have the weekends and we'd do some errands and stuff that he had to do, and then we'd get lunch and we'd come home and we'd watch movies in the living room, and he'd lay on the couch and take a nap. I'd lay on the floor with my toys and play and we'd watch whatever came to mind. Now, a lot of times it was westerns and stuff or old Bond movies, but I remember Day of the Jackal, and I remember the scene of him tying his sniper rifle to a tree so he could line in the scope. You know, and I remember that being a very important scene. And the neat thing is that there is the new version of the series, and that scene is in it almost exactly. So I thought that was pretty cool. But Ed says he had to read Day of the Jackal in college. It was about a cat and mouse type game to find a killer, right? Yes. Yeah. It's MI5, a member of MI5 tracking this killer known as the Jackal. So, but yeah, this is, 1973 movie. Then in 1997, they tried to redo it, and they had Bruce Willis cast as the killer, which was kind of unique for him. And they had Richard Gere cast as the guy hunting him. Yeah, they Americanized the hell out of it. But there was so many changes to it that it really wasn't the Day of the Jackal anymore, and they just called it the Jackal. To the point that even the writer of the estate of the writer sued to have the name of the movie changed. And I think the Jackal is what they settled on instead of the Day of the Jackal, because it was so different than the source material. And I remember watching that movie, and I was thinking, it's all right. It was a decent movie, and I think my memory of seeing the Day of the Jackal when I was a kid is spotty, so it didn't really. The changes didn't really strike me as hard as, say, had I watched them back to back or watched them a year apart type of thing. But so over on Peacock, they have this new series, and I'd say it's a few months old now. I'm not sure exactly when it came out. Let's see if it says. Okay, it came out in December, so it's only 2 months old now. And supposedly they're working on a sequel, which I do not understand how that's going to happen. But cast as the killer is Eddie Redmayne. Yeah, that was a Richard Gere movie, The Jackal. So they have Eddie Redmayne as the assassin. And if you don't know who Eddie Redmayne is, if you've seen any of the Fantastic Beasts movies from Harry Potter, he plays Newt Scamander. He, I think, at one point played Stephen Hawking's. So he's a celebrated actor. Playing the MI5 agent going after him is Lashana Lynch. I think that's how you pronounce her name. The actress from Captain Marvel who played Monica Rambeau's mother. Yeah, so Lashana Lynch. Also in the series is Nick Blood, who you may have seen in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was, what was his name? Hunter was his name. He was the one that was involved with Mockingbird. They were going to have their own spinoff series, but it didn't happen. And then playing the MI5 agent's boss is Chukwudi Iwuji from Peacemaker and Guardians of the Galaxy. He played the High Evolutionary in Guardians 3. Hey, Catherine, good to see you. I usually do watch Super Bowl, but I just can't get anything up for this game. I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not a Seahawks fan. I am rooting for Sam Darnold as the quarterback because of his story, but overall, I'd rather hang out with you guys for a while. So, all right. So, the thing that I'm noticing with the Day of the Jackal is they've turned it into a 10 episode series. Cat, okay. I will call you Cat. Um, with 10 episodes, you can kind of slow down and look at the book and really pull specifics from the novel that you couldn't in a 2 hour movie. Why watch that when the real show is here on with? Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you. So, so they're diving a little deeper into the characters, and what's interesting to me is I didn't read the novel, but like I said, I've seen both versions of it so far. So I started watching this, and it was a slow start. I will tell you, if if you try to watch the series, the first episode is a little slow. And part of it, I think, is, and this may just be me, um, there's a lot of it takes place in foreign countries. And when they do the foreign country scenes, they use the language of that country, which I think is great. But, in some parts it's Spanish, in some parts it's German, it's different. And when you have to read a lot of subtitles, it can slow you down, and it just seems to make the episode go slower. At least for me, it does. Now, that said, I got through the first episode, got into the second one. Second one started still a little slow, but once we got about halfway through the second one, it picked up, and now I'm into episode 6 of 10. So it's moving along, and I'm enjoying it, and it's getting real intense. But there's something happening with this version that I didn't experience with the other two versions. And maybe that's because we're getting so much extra time with these characters that they're digging deeper into their personalities and they're giving them more motivation. But in the other two versions, you realize that the Jackal is this bad person that, he's killing people. He's a paid killer, and you're rooting for them to stop him. This series, I'm not. This series, I'm actually rooting for the Jackal. I am enjoying Eddie Redmayne's portrayal of the character, and it's not earth-shattering, but you kind of see that he's just really good at his job. I mean, like, he is someone who picked a job in his career he found, and he wants to do it the best he can, and he's really good at it. So, yeah, his job is killing people, but he's kind of an artist. He's really, really good at it. I mean, the opening of the series, and this shouldn't take away too much of it, is he makes a sniper shot longer than had ever been recorded. And that's what kind of gets him on the radar and starts the whole story. And it's not that he doesn't come across as arrogant about it. He doesn't come across as, oh, look what I did. He came across as, well, that's what was needed to do the job. See, that's the thing, that Bruce Willis's character was ruthless, and this guy doesn't seem to be as ruthless. You kind of start to get him, you know? And then on the flip side of that, who's really ruthless is Lashana, um, forgetting her name again. Lashana Lynch's character, Bianca Pullman, the MI6 agent who is tracking him, because she kind of forces herself onto the task force and does things to get information that seems really over the top, that you sit there and you go, is this a good person? I mean, okay, she's good at her job too, but it just seems like she's just a wrecking ball, you know? And there are points where you think the Jackal has a relationship with someone, and that seems more important to him than his job. He's going to do his job. He committed to it. He's going to do it. But that relationship is important to him, where Lashana is willing to steamroll over her family for the job. It's kind of weird. Like I said, I find myself rooting for the bad guy. And I don't know if that's what they were trying to do. If it is, they're doing a great job. And maybe that's how they're going to have a second season. Is I know in the book and in the 73 movie, the the ending is a little vague. I don't think it is in the Jackal. I don't remember. It's been a long time. I mean, that movie came out 30 years ago now. And I feel old again. Yes, the Jackal came out almost 30 years ago, and the original Day of the Jackal came out 53 years ago. But the new one came out 2 months ago, so we can talk about it. All right, let me catch up on chat real quick. Lots of saying hi to each other. Love that. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, so far the Super Bowl's been boring anyway. It's 3-0. It's already the second quarter. So the first 15 minutes of the Super Bowl, which takes forever to do anyway, they've only scored 3 points on a field goal. That's boring. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the Day of the Jackal. And see, there's a couple of shows that I really have gotten into this season or in the last year that I love, and I'd like, you should go watch this. You should go watch this. And then I've had people tell me, oh, I did the first episode and I couldn't get into it. And I stop and I think, well, is it me? What is it about these shows? The Day of the Jackal, it got me. I got hooked on it. Department Q is another one where a lot of people I know love it. There are also people I know, they're like, well, I gave the first episode a shot and it just didn't hook me. I'm like, what did I see that you didn't? How did you miss the brilliance of Department Q? By the way, from last year, that's my number one show, Department Q. It was by far my favorite thing that I watched last year, and I'm so happy that's getting a second season as well. Massive Attack Super Predator was one of the coolest openings of a movie I've seen. Massive Attack. Huh. Don't think I've seen that. Yeah, Ed, I know. I get those reminders all the time. There's a guy on TikTok, and I think he does it on YouTube too. And he does these videos. He does two styles of videos. One where he's God and he's talking all the different years, but the other one he's different millenniums or different generations. So he's Boomer, he's Gen X, he's Gen Z, he's Millennial, and they're always arguing. And the poor Millennial guy just can't seem to deal with the fact that you know some of his favorite songs are 20 years old and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting fun when he does that. Let's see. Never heard of Department Q. I'll have to look it up. Okay. Department Q. I will always talk about Department Q. Department Q is what they call Scandinavian noir. It's based off a book series. And it's going to sound like your typical setup for a lot of types of shows. It's a damaged cop being given the drag uh, cases to kind of keep him quiet, to keep him out of the way because he butts heads with everybody. But in doing so, he ends up pulling together all of the outcasts in the police force and creating this department that is really good at solving really hard cases. Um, that's the basis of it. The characters in this show are so cleverly written and so non-cliche. Because I mean, like I said, a lot of these British police shows, it's like, well, the main character has a problem with authority. He has a drinking problem. He's obviously had a falling out with all of his family. He tends to fight authority, just knocks heads with it. It does more damage to himself than anything. And that's not what this is. This, you feel like it's going to start that way, but instead you really get to see these characters grow. This is on Netflix. It came out last year or in 2025. They're working on season 2. It stars Matthew Good, who he's been in a lot of things. He was Osmandius in the Watchmen movie. He was in the Benedict Cumberbatch movie about breaking the Enigma code. He was like the second guy. Um, there's a vampire television series he's on. I mean, he's one of those guys that shows up in a lot of stuff. And he's great as the lead on this. Kate Dickie is his boss, and she was in Game of Thrones as the woman who breastfed her weird ass son way too long, and they had a giant pit over the sky. So, if you watch Game of Thrones, you'll totally get that reference. What's interesting is Kate Dickie is also in Day of the Jackal. So she's in both Department Q and Day of the Jackal. The thing I love about Department Q is that the big trend in mysteries right now is to make the cases personal, to make the detective tied to the outcome. And I hate that. I hate that because it's cheesy writing. Well, this doesn't do that. You get a lot of backstory on these characters. You find out about them. You see how their personal stories affect them working this case. But, you know, the killer doesn't turn out to be the ex-wife of the detective, or, you know, some bizarre thing like that. It's more straightforward. So, and it's more of a true mystery. And it's one of those that, for me, writing mysteries and knowing how movies and TVs work, I tend to figure out what the mystery is way, way early. And I can't do that here. This is one that I slowly started piecing it together, and I had an idea, but didn't have all of it until the very end, which is awesome. All right, let me catch up on chat. Ed was born the year the Jackal came out, I'm only 30. Okay. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. That was really good. I saw that version, recent version of it, or I'm doing that millennial thing. I saw the most recent movie version of it. I think Gary Oldman was in it or something like that. But yeah, so that was good. But that's another slow British one. British like to tell very slow stories. You know, a lot of sitting around talking. You know, where I think Sherlock Holmes is the perfect English detective, where Sam Spade is the American detective. In Sherlock Holmes, he is observing and talking and asking questions. And Sam Spade, he just runs in and hits things. And that's pretty much the difference between, how Americans tell stories and how British tell stories. You know, Eddie Izzard used to do this great routine where he would talk about British movies and how, I'm in here counting matches, separating my matchbooks. What is it, Lieutenant? Sir, it's, well, perhaps I should leave. Perhaps you shall. It's just very British. Let's see. Jay says the killer was really the friends we made along the way. Something to be said for that. Do you guys, God, talking about British and American, do you guys watch The Traitors? That's how I found The Day of the Jackal. We have Peacock, and it seems like the only reason we normally watch it is unless there's something specific we're looking for, are The Traitors. And there's a British version and an American version and an Australian version. We haven't tried the Australian version, but the British version and the American version are so different. The British version normally just uses everyday average people. The American version pulls in reality show people. Like the most recent season had like 3 different women from the Real Housewives shows. They had people from Survivor and Love Island and all of these different shows. And then every once in a while, they'll throw in somebody like comedian Ron Funches, actor Michael Rapaport, Travis Kelce's mother. They were all on this last season. One of the judges from Top Chef or whatever that show was. And it's a very weird, eclectic group because they're all like mugging for the camera and bigger than life. And then you go over to the British one and it's just average people, it's just real people. So recently, the British one released a celebrity version. And we watched that. We just thought we'd give it a shot. Well, it turns out when the British say celebrity version, as opposed to the American version of a celebrity version of a show, they use actual celebrities in England. They use people you've heard of. You've seen in a few shows. The celebrity version of Traders UK had Sir Stephen Fry. Great actor. It had Jonathan Ross, who comic people know for doing the documentary Finding Steve Ditko. It had just a bunch of actors that you sit back and you go, oh, that's Celia Emery. She was just in the Thursday Murder Club with Ben Kingsley and Pierce Brosnan and Helen Mirren. She was the fourth in that group. So you kind of sit back and you go, these are like real people, real celebrity. They use real people normally, and when they go to celebrities, they get real celebrities. And then you go over to the American celebrity ones, and it's like, I don't know who these people are. Just because you were on Survivor doesn't make you a celebrity, does it? Just because you're on Real Housewives or Love Island or Under Deck or whatever they call these shows. Wow, I'm doing definitely a British American thing here. I can't help it. I'm half British. My mother was born in London, England. She is the least British person you will ever meet. My grandmother was born in County Cork, Ireland. My grandfather was born in Wales. My dad's side of the family is from Chicago. So, half English, half American. All right, it says, here's a question. When you're writing a book, like a mystery, Do you know everything is going to turn out before you start, or do you think of things and tweak it chapter to chapter? Okay, great question. When I sit down to write a book like a Lucius Fogg book, I have a basic idea of what I want the ending to be. And I have an idea of how I want to start it. But I never try to do the whole thing. What I'll do is I break it into thirds. I write in 3 acts. So I figure out first act and what I want to be the big ending of the first act. And I will write that first chapter, or the first third of the book, but I don't necessarily force it to where I want it to go. I let it stray. I let it wander. The best example of this had to be the very first Lucius Fogg book, which starts off with a guy who had been forcibly turned into a werewolf coming to Jimmy for help, to Jimmy and Lucius for help. And I got a ways into the chapter and I realized this wasn't clicking because it wasn't immediate enough. It wasn't personal enough. Because I was writing first person narrative, I needed to better understand what it would be like to be suddenly a werewolf. So I killed off my client and made Jimmy become a werewolf. Didn't know how I was going to undo it at the end because I had no plan for Jimmy to be a werewolf going forward, but it made sense. So I wrote that first act and made that huge change. And then I got to the end of the first act and I'm like, okay, I'm not where I expected to be, but I like where I'm at. So what I'm going to do now is I know where I want to end the second act with. So I'm going to map out an outline to get there from where I am instead of where I wanted to be. And then that changes the writing. And when I get to the end of the second act, big things will change too. And in that first book, I suddenly added the Russian mob. Hadn't planned on having the Russian mob in it, but the Russian mob made a lot of sense when I added them. And it changed the ending, as did, what happened with Jimmy. So by the time I sat down to write the ending or the last act, I was so far from where I had originally started and what I had originally to do that I kind of needed to rework the ending. So that's pretty much how that all worked. Just you start off with the idea, but you have to let the characters be the characters. You have to let them guide the ship because you don't want to force your characters into doing something that they wouldn't normally do because the audience will know. Your readers will know if you're being unrealistic. And you'll see that in reviews and stuff when people talk about it feeling unnatural, it didn't flow, because the writer is trying to force things. This is where I want it to go. This is where it needs to go. I'm not that guy. I want it to go over there eventually, but if I have to go by way of Cucamonga, then I'm going to go by way of Cucamonga. So, see what else we got. The UK has some great shows. We just can't get here. Never mind the Buzzcocks. Yeah, the Graham Norton show. I used to watch the Graham Norton show on BBC America. And I see it a lot on UK. That's in the news a lot right now, the Graham Norton show. And it has to do with Taylor Swift. And normally I don't talk about Taylor Swift much, but I do have a lot of respect for the way she does things. And I guess she was on Graham Norton, and you might have seen this online lately because a lot of people are covering it. But she was on Graham Norton a little while back, and there were guests on there, including Domhnall Gleeson from the Harry Potter movies. They were Cillian Murphy, Louis Capaldi, a couple other people. And at one point, Cillian Murphy they were talking about Domhnall Gleeson and his bad dancing. And Cillian Murphy made a joke that that's the only reason to watch it is his dancing. Hey, Thomas, good to see you. And Dom Hall made a joke. Well, he says, well, I'm just hoping to get into one of Taylor's videos. And if you see the clip, when he says it, the camera pans over to Taylor, and it's almost like you literally see the light bulb going on over her head. Because she's like, and turns towards Graham. Now, what ended up happening is that this weekend she released the video for the song Opalite. And in it, Domhnall Gleeson plays this guy she meets, and the two of them together make their own happiness. And that's what the song's about, is making your own happiness and getting away from previously bad relationships. And in it, Domhnall is kind of taking the place of Travis Kelce. And, so there's a lot of depth to it. But what ends up happening is every single person that was on the Graham Norton show that night appears one way or another in the video. Louis Capaldi pops up. They couldn't get Cillian Murphy time-wise, so there's a poster of him as an ad for Opalite. There's two other women who are on the couch. I can't remember their names right now that night. And both of them show up in the video as well. And Graham Norton is in the video. So it's just kind of a neat thing to, all of a sudden this idea pops in her head and she follows through. And I love that. I like a lot of her music. I didn't know a lot of her music. I'm not a Swiftie, but I have mad respect for the way she does business and the way she's handled her life. And I love that somebody could get an idea like that, look at the people around and go, we're going to make this happen. And does. And I think that's just the neat part of it. If you look online, I'm sure you'll come across a video that shows some of the music video and some of the clips from the Graham Norton show. But because you brought up Graham Norton. All right. Let me check the chats again. Yeah. Graham is awesome. He's a lot of fun. Hey, Dan. Hey, Kat. Yeah, not watching Dope's Business, and I'm watching them. When did we get married again? Hi, Thomas. Thomas, that's awesome. He's a Jack something. Okay. Greta Lee and Jodie Turner-Smith. Thank you, Jay. Jay, you don't actually work on this show, but you still get me all the information. I love that. Thank you. By the way, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you haven't. I'm still trying to build this forum, so it would be appreciated if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube. It would be greatly appreciated. All right. Now, I do miss doing the other show. Yeah, it was always fun to come on and chit chat during the day, and so I do miss that. But that's how life is sometimes. All right, let's. Okay, be nice to Thomas. He is here. So, all right. The other show I wanted to talk about is Starfleet Academy. I don't know if you guys are watching that. It's on Paramount. Again, it's hard to watch some of these shows because they're all in these bizarre streaming services. I have Paramount because I get my groceries delivered by Walmart. So I paid for the Walmart membership and they gave me Paramount Plus. And I'm like, why would I ever watch Paramount Plus? Now I actually watch it quite a bit. I watch the Star Trek stuff and I watch, by the way, Jack of All Trades. You guys remember the Jack of All Trades TV show with Bruce Campbell? Anybody? Okay. Um, so I've been watching the Star Trek stuff, caught up on a lot of Star Trek stuff. So far, the series has been very schizophrenic to me. It feels like there's like two groups of writers on it. There is one group that is steeped in the lore and the history of Star Trek, and they purposefully keep track of everything and want to add little Easter eggs and little moments and little bits to really bring you in. And there's this other group that's out there going, we're making a WB show with beautiful people in scantily clad outfits. And then they all get together like right before they film and they go, oh, we're going to have to put the script together. There we go. Okay, that'll fit. So there are moments in the show that I think are great. There are some characters in the show that I think are great. And then there's stuff and it's like, why are we doing this? This is way over dramatic. This is, there's some moments on there that would make the writers of Arrow go, oh, dude, scale it back a bit. You're going a little far. The Vampire Diaries people would be like, a little much there. Daring Dragoon remembers. Nice, Jay. So, yeah. But the latest episode was one where I think the people steeped in lore got a chance to push a little more because it's a huge DS9 episode. And even though this Starfleet Academy takes place way in the future from DS9, there is a whole bunch of stuff about Cisco, him becoming the emissary for the Bajorans, Jake, Dax. All those characters are referenced or play a part of it somehow. They even get the actor who played Jake to come back for something. So I don't hate the show, but it's like I wish they had an editor come in going, no, we're not doing that. But this stuff is good. And that's where I'm at, There's some really good stuff and there's some really bad stuff. So if you haven't watched it, lower your expectations a bit. Lower your expectations a bit, and give it a shot. Are you doing this because the Panthers got close enough to the game that it still stings? No, Jay, that's got to be Kyle. No, I'm doing it because last time I checked, it's 6-0 means it's only 2 field goals, which is boring. The Patriots keep scores incredibly low, and Sam Darnold has a tendency to be kind of an error magnet or makes a lot of mistakes in high pressure games. So I didn't think it would be that interesting of a Super Bowl, at least until the second half. So I thought I would give a place for other people to come. The people that don't want to watch sports ball. The people that want a place to talk about nerd stuff. And for some reason I've drifted into an Irish accent. But yes, This is what we got. There is never enough Chimunga Biaka Batuka jokes. Never. Never enough. I will always have a deep place in my heart for Chimunga Biaka Batuka. By the way, his nephew is now in the NHL. So NHL announcers are now having the problem of saying his name. See, I admit it with the Lions getting so close the last couple of years, them flopping out of the playoffs, ruined the Super Bowl for me this year. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, for me, it wasn't that the Panthers. Yeah, Michigan fans. That's where Ed knows him, is from Michigan Wolverines. That guy scored 457 all-purpose yards against the amazing the hated rivals Ohio State. That's how I learned about him too. But um, yeah, the Panthers weren't supposed to be in the playoffs. The Panthers were supposed to be horrible this year and continue because they're growing. They're a young team, and for them to get to the playoffs, I almost felt like that's a bad thing because now they have to play a first place schedule next year. So they're going to have to play all the good teams. I was hoping they would be like second or third place in the division. So next year they could do better, but we're getting there. So, yeah. I used to work with a guy who was a huge Ohio State fan, and we bet once a year Michigan versus Ohio State. And I wasn't a huge Michigan fan, but, it reminded me of the movie Red Dawn. The name was Wolverines anyway, and it was a team I recognized. So I always took the bet just to mess with them. And that year, Biaka Batuka did so well for the team. I mean, literally just beat the crap out of Ohio State. So what I started doing is I worked with this guy and we traveled a lot. So we'd have to call each other. And this was before cell phones were common. We had pagers, but we would call the locations and leave messages. And whenever I would leave a message for him, I would leave it as Tamunga Biaka Patuka. Can I say who's calling? Yes, it's Tamunga Biaka Patuka. Can you spell that? I certainly can. And I knew how to spell first name, last name, the whole thing. And I would leave him phone messages just to torture him because of how bad Biaka Patuka did. And then he got drafted by the Carolina Panthers, which was like, oh, the football gods have spoken. So I immediately went out and bought my girlfriend a Tamunga Biaka Patuka jersey, which only seems partly funny until you find out that my girlfriend worked with us and she sat right in front of him. And on every Friday we had casual Friday. So she would wear her football jersey and make him stare at the name Biaka Patuka every Friday. So I love me some Tamunga Biaka Patuka. Yeah, I like Michigan. Michigan's had some great players. Tom Brady, Chad Henning. I don't know them all that well, but I know enough about them. And I do root for them. I'm happy when they do well. I don't know what the hell happened to J.J. McCarthy. Nothing to say on that one. But all right. So this episode's kind of going. All right. Anybody have any other questions or things they'd like me to talk about before we wrap up the show? If you want an update on Obsidian Moon, I've been doing something else writing wise that's kind of taken my attention away from it. So it's been a couple months. I'm about halfway through Chaos Game, but I will be getting back to it shortly and getting back on track. Wait, so on another note, Dan, I have 2 show pitches for you. Okay, we'll chat. Now, does that mean he wants me to do them on my show? Or does that mean he wants me to do them on the experience? I am not getting that close to the 1,000 because I keep forgetting to hype the mailing list. I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at self-promotion. I really need to hire a promotion to a PR team. I just got served a news story. Charles Woodson turned down owning the Cleveland Browns and instead is launching a liquor brand. That's probably better for him. Yeah, I would think that's a better move. So, yeah, Kyle, let's talk sometime tomorrow. Also, follow up on the DM thing. So, Jay says, one day I'll send you that Panthers keychain I got you when we went to. Oh, I forgot about that. But yeah, please do. So, yeah, I am a big Panthers fan, has been my whole life. So, I just want you to do them. I need a Dan Wickline Dungeon Crawler Carl breakdown. I have read the first book, so I can do that. The second is a Doom Lottery, but that's an EXP show. Okay. So you want a Dungeon Crawler Carl episode. Should I get through the second book or just start with the first one? All right. In the next couple weeks, we will do Dungeon Crawler Carl, regardless of if I get through the second book or not. I just started another Brandon Sanderson book, so I guess I could switch. I'm not that far into it. We'll do something like that. Yeah. My only problem with Dungeon Crawler Carl, and that's only in the first book, because like I said, I haven't gotten to the other ones yet, it started feeling a little repetitive. By the end of it, it's like, okay, this book should have ended 4 or 5 chapters earlier. Feels like we went a little bit, it stayed its welcome a little too long, overstayed its welcome. So I don't know if that's something like, he's going to get better. So obviously I want to give him more. I was thinking about that with Jim Butcher and the Dresden Files. Somebody pointed out that Dresden is no longer urban fantasy. He was urban fantasy when it started because it was about a detective in a supernatural world. And then somewhere along the way, he just kept adding and adding and adding and adding to where you read 12 Months, the latest Butcher book, or the Dresden File book, and there's so many things. Gargoyles show up. Greek gods are in it. The Valkyrie, Norse gods. Just vampires and werewolves and Lovecraftian creatures. And it's like, the only reason this works is because he didn't do that in the beginning. It's because he started small with a small urban fantasy character. And then the next book, he added a little bit more. And the next book added a little bit more until he, you're 18 books in and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I think that's kind of how you have to remember when you're reading a book is if it's a part of a series, it's going to get better. But that first one's always going to be the rough one because that's how they're figuring out what they're doing. So where I liked Dungeon Crawler Carl, I don't think I liked it as much as the general populace does. I definitely am going to give the second book a shot because I think it has the potential and I'm thinking he's probably going to, get better and better each book he writes. Okay. I think we're going to wrap that up there. Yeah. So let's do one last score check. Still 6-0, come up to half. So we're going to wrap up in time for you to go see the halftime show if you want. And that's it. Hope you all have a great day. As always, please hit the like and subscribe. If you have ideas like Kyle did for an episode, let me know. You can tell me here. You can put it into the YouTube chat, my Facebook page, my YouTube page, my whatever social media page. Just reach out, let me know, and we'll see what we can do about getting your topic on. Have a great day. If you haven't signed up for my mailing list for Obsidian Moon, please do so. You can go to danwickline.com. It's the first entry on the page. Just click that link. It'll take you to the sign up. I think I've only sent like one or two things out the entire time. So you can tell I'm not going to overburden you with emails. So, all right, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend, a great night, and a great week. And I'll see you all